international news. First, the headlines. Kenyan Central Bank cuts key rates to support lending. Tunisian court hands prison terms to stop politicians. Tunisian president sacks finance minister. Trump to ban transgender women and girls from female sport. US AI Safety Institute director leaves role. US seizes $39.5 million in fake sports gear. Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera has ordered defense forces to begin preparations for a withdrawal of its troops from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, a statement said on Wednesday. The Malawi troops are part of a contingent of soldiers from the Southern African Regional Bloc deployed in Congo to help it tackle armed insurgents. The bloc extended the military mission last year. President Chakwera has ordered the MDF, Malawi Defense Force commander, to begin preparations for the withdrawal of Malawian troops to honor the declaration of a ceasefire by the warring parties there and to pave way for their planned negotiations towards a lasting peace, the statement said. A rebel alliance, which includes M23 fighters, has declared a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons starting on Tuesday. Kenya's central bank cut the benchmark interest rate to an almost two-year low as benign inflation allowed it to prop up its stuttering economy. The Monetary Policy Committee lowered the key rate to 10.75% from 11.25%. Governor Kamau Tog said in an emailed statement on Wednesday that matched the median estimate of 7 economists in a Bloomberg survey. The MPC reduced the rate as inflation is expected to remain below the 5% midpoint of the central bank's target range in the near term, supported by a low and stable core inflation, low energy prices inflation, and exchange rate stability, Tog said in an emailed statement. The shilling has flatlined at 129 shillings per dollar for the past 6 months and was the world's best performing currency last year. That helped the inflation below 5% for the past 8 months. It quickened to 3.3% in January from 3% in a month earlier. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy, slowed to 2% from 2.2% in December, highlighting muted demand. The decision was also taken to support economic activity after growth decelerated last year while ensuring exchange rate stability, Tudge said. The economy likely grew 4.6% last year compared with 5.6% in 2023, he said. It is expected to pick up in 2025 and expand 5.4%, he added. The wide gap between headline inflation and the benchmark rate also gave the committee room to ease, even as central banks across the world adopt a cautious stance amid uncertainty wrought by U.S. President Donald Trump's policies. While Trump's America's First agenda has hurt emerging markets, currencies, and ongoing sale of tax-free infrastructure bonds, which are popular with foreign investors, is likely to ramp up dollar inflows into Kenya. Tunisian courts sentenced a number of top politicians, former officials and journalists to long prison terms on Wednesday, defense lawyer said. The latest move in what critics say is an attempt to stamp out opposition to President Kai's side. Among those sentenced on charges of conspiring against states were Rached Ghannouchi, veteran head of the Islamist-leaning Imahanda party, who was handed a 22-year term, and former Prime Minister Hichem Mechichi, who received 35 years. Ghannouchi, 83, has been in prison since 2023, receiving 2 sentences of a total of 5 years in separate cases. Mechichi has been living abroad since 2021, a few months after Said sacked him and shot the elected parliament, a step the opposition described as a coup. These are unjust and political rulings that aim to eliminate political opponents, said Mokhtar Jmai, one of the lawyers, adding that they would appeal against the sentences. Another called the trial a blatant violation of the independence of the judiciary, saying in a statement that it came in the context of further attacks on rights and freedoms. A total of 41 people were charged in the case. Jemai said the court handed a 27-year sentence was already jailed. Most political party leaders in Tunisia have been jailed in what they say are fabricated cases. Uganda's police have detained 9 finance ministry officials as part of an investigation into accusations of hacking the central bank's electronic systems that resulted in theft of 62 billion shillings, approximately $16.87 million, the ministries and police said. In November last year, State Minister for Finance, Henry Musazizi, confirmed reports in local media that the central bank's account had been hacked and money stolen. Those detained include the senior-most official of the ministry's Treasury Department, the police and the Finance Ministry said. Some officers attached to the Accountant General's office at the ministry were summoned and detained by the Criminal Investigations Department to facilitate conclusion of the investigations, the Finance Ministry said in a post on its X account late on Tuesday. The ministry did not give the names of those detained or their number. Police spokesperson Kituma Rusoke, however, told NTV television that 9 officials had been detained and also read out their names that included the top Treasury official. The official and the 8 others arrested were not immediately reachable to comment. State-owned New Vision newspaper had reported the hackers, identifying themselves as waste, accessed the Bank of Uganda's IT systems and illicitly transferred the funds. Tunisians with businessmen accused of corruption in exchange for returning funds to the state. In an effort to mobilize resources this year, the government raised taxes on middle and high-income earners and resorted to borrowing directly from the central bank worth $2.2 billion to pay urgent debts. Daughter of former South African President Jacob Zuma, Duduzile Zuma Sambola, has appeared in court on terrorism charges over her alleged involvement in the 2021 riots that left more than 300 people dead. Violence, chaos and fear ripped through the port city of Durban, then spread to Gauteng after Zuma's jailing sparked intense protests over 4 years ago. Zuma Sambola, a controversial figure in her own right, was accused of sharing incendiary social media posts that fueled the civil unrest. The arrest comes as a result of a meticulous investigation, said spokesperson for the Hawks Elite Police Unit, Bring Tandi Mbambo. Zuma Sambola handed herself into the Durban Central Police Station on Thursday morning to face charges under the Protection of Constitutional Democracy against Terrorist and Related Activities Act and incitement to commit violence, police said. National Prosecuting Authority (NPA) spokesperson Muntunzi Maga said the investigation had taken such a long time because the case was complex and unique. It is the first time that the NPA is charging a person based on content posted on what we call X, which was previously known as Twitter, for content that we consider to amount to incitement to commit terrorism. The news site quotes him saying, Zuma Sambola told the court that she intended to plead not guilty to the charges. She also said that there was no evidence linking her to the riots. The case has been postponed to March for trial in Durban High Court, and she has been released on bail. Argentina will pull out of the World Health Organization, President Javier Milei's office said on Wednesday, following in the footsteps of the United States, which announced its exit from the UN agency last month. Milei's decision was based on deep differences regarding health management, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Spokesman Manuel Adoni told reporters, adding that Argentina would not allow an international body to interfere in our sovereignty. The measure also gave Argentina greater flexibility to implement policies adapted to the context locally while ensuring greater availability of resources, he said. Self-declared anarcho-capitalist, Milei is an avowed fan of U.S. President Donald Trump, who signed an order within hours of his January 20 inauguration for the United States to withdraw from the World Health Organization, which he has also criticized for its handling of the pandemic. Washington was the biggest contributor to the Geneva-based organization, which Trump claimed had ripped us off, and the U.S. withdrawal could leave global health initiatives short of funding. Since taking office in December 2023, Milei has gutted public spending, having vowed to maintain a zero budget deficit after years of overspending. His austerity measures are estimated to have tripped millions more people into poverty, but the country also recorded its biggest ever trade surplus in 2024, partly due to an imports and spending slump. Milei was the first foreign leader to visit Trump at his Mar-a-Lago, Florida estate after the Republicans' November U.S. election victory. One person died and 15 were arrested trying to enter Canada from the United States in 3 incidents in recent weeks. Canadian police said on Wednesday, highlighting efforts to secure the border as U.S. President Donald Trump demands a crackdown. Speaking at a televised news conference, Royal Canadian Mounted Police Assistant Commissioner Lisa Morland said the people were of different nationalities and not prepared for the frigid Canadian winter, and that no fentanyl was found. Their details were not released because of privacy laws. The news conference was held days after Trump suspended on Monday a threat of steep tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau secured the tariff suspension after speaking to Trump about efforts to deploy new technology and personnel along the border and to launch cooperative efforts to fight organized crime, fentanyl smuggling and money laundering. The tariffs paused forestalled for now the onset of a trade war that economists predicted would damage the economies of all involved. Moreland, showcasing thermal imagery and aerial footage, said the RCMP was trying to make it clear that we have the technology and the resources in place to keep our borders secure. In the latest of the 3 incidents, a man drove into Canada from the Court's port of entry, connecting Montana and Alberta, and tried to flee when stopped for inspection, Moreland said. The man, a U.S. citizen, died of a self-inflicted firearm injury while being chased by police, Moreland added. Panama Canal authorities on Wednesday denied the U.S. State Department's claim that U.S. government vessels would be able to cross the canal without paying fees, likely ratcheting up tensions after President Donald Trump threatened to take back control of the crossing. The Canal Authority, an autonomous agency overseen by the Panamanian government, said in a statement that it had not made any changes to charge fees or rights to cross the canal, adding its statement was directly in response to the U.S. claims. The U.S. State Department has said earlier in the day that Panama's government had agreed to no longer charge crossing fees for U.S. government vessels, in a move that would save the U.S. millions of dollars a year. With total responsibility, the Panama Canal Authority, as it has indicated, is willing to establish dialogue with relevant U.S. officials regarding the transit of wartime, as the president has accused the Central American country of charging excessive rates to use its trade passage, one of the busiest in the world. Trump has also repeatedly claimed that Panama has ceded control of the canal to China, which Panama and China deny. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino earlier this week as part of a trip through Central America, with Mulino vowing to pull out of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Mulino has also repeatedly dismissed Trump's threat that the U.S. retake control of the canal, which it largely built and administered for decades. But the U.S. and Panama signed a pair of accords in 1977 that paved the way for the canal's return to full Panamanian control. The United States handed it over in 1999 after a period of joint administration. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday attempting to exclude transgender girls and women from female sports, a directive that supporters say will restore fairness, but critics say infringes on the rights of any tiny minority of athletes. The order directs the Department of Justice to make sure all government agencies enforce a ban on transgender girls and women from participating in female school sports under Trump's interpretation of the Title IX, a law against sex discrimination in education. The war on women's sports is over, Trump said at a signing ceremony with about 100 women and girls aligned behind him, many of the youngest ones wearing uniforms and sports jerseys. My administration will not stand by and watch men beat and batter female athletes. The order, which is likely to face legal challenges, threatens to cut off federal funding for any school that allows transgender women or girls to compete in a female-designated sporting competition. It would affect only a small number of athletes. The president of the National Collegiate Athletics Association told a Senate panel in December he was aware of fewer than 10 transgender athletes among the 530,000 competing at 1,100 member schools. The NCAA welcomed the executive order for providing a clear national standard in the face of a patchwork of conflicting state laws and court decisions, saying in a statement it would confirm its policy accordingly. The NCAA Board of Governors is reviewing the executive order and will take further guidance from the administration, the statement said. Under current policy, the NCAA requires transgender women athletes to meet testosterone limits on a sports-by-sports basis. The issue has also connected with voters who responded with enthusiastic applause when Trump mentioned bans on transgender athletes at his campaign rallies. He repeatedly urged television advertisements that criticized allowing transgender women and girls to compete in female sports. Polls have found a majority of Americans oppose transgender athletes competing in sports that align with their gender identity, and 25 Republican-led states have passed laws that ban transgender girls from participating in girls' sports. Elizabeth Kelly, the director of the Safety Institute and a face of US AI policy on the world stage, is set to leave her position by the end of the week, according to people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss private information. Kelly and the Safety Institute did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Housed under the Commerce Department, the USAI Safety Institute works with academics and developers to identify and mitigate risks from cutting-edge AI systems. It was created after former President Joe Biden signed an executive order in 2023 calling for leading AI companies to share safety test results and other critical information with the federal government. The Biden administration tapped Kelly, a former White House aide, to lead the institute nearly a year ago. Her departure comes as world leaders and tech executives head to Paris for an AI summit, according to a person familiar with the matter. Kelly and the Safety Institute helped host a similar gathering in San Francisco in November, shortly after Trump won the election. Since taking office, Trump has moved swiftly to put his own stamp on AI policy, rescinding Biden's order and calling for a new approach to boost U.S. dominance in artificial intelligence. Trump also touted a massive new venture from OpenAI, SoftBank Group Corp, and Oracle Corp that promises to invest $100 billion in infrastructure to support. But many in Washington, including Republicans, have commended the Institute's efforts to work with the tech industry to create voluntary standards on safe and responsible use for AI. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill also sought to advance legislation into the last Congress that would have formally authorized the Institute. It employs more than 24 staffers across offices in Washington and San Francisco. Elizabeth was an extraordinary leader for the Safety Institute at a fraught moment when success was far from preordained, said Ben Buchanan, a former White House AI advisor under the Biden administration. She built a startup that got things done within the bureaucracy and recruited a world-class team to execute voluntary national security-focused AI testing and research. Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, is the chief human resource agency of the federal government. The office manages $1.1 trillion in assets under the Earned Benefits Trust Fund, which funds finance retirement, health, and life insurance benefits for millions of federal workers. Roach worked at the OPM for 8 years. Her LinkedIn shows she served as the CFO for just under a year and a half. The ABC News reporter Ben Sigil first reported Roach's resignation in an X post on Wednesday evening, citing unnamed sources who said she was pushed out. OPM did not respond to a request for comment from BI. Roach's departure comes as the federal workforce is undergoing massive shakeup under President Donald Trump's second term in office. Last month, the Trump administration gave federal employees between January 28 to February 6 to accept a buyout offer if they did not want to work for the administration. Those who took the buyout will receive full pay and benefits through September. The offer was extended to all federal employees except those working in military, postal immigration, and national security roles. More than 20,000 workers have accepted the buyouts, a White House spokesperson told BI in a story published on February 4. A spokesperson for OPM said the agency is expecting a spike of resignations to come 24 to 48 hours before deadline. The federal government employs more than 2 million people. U.S. authorities Sports merchandise ahead of Super Bowl LIX officials said on Wednesday in a crackdown on fake goods being sold to fans. The operation, led by Homeland Security Investigations (HSI) in collaboration with the National Football League (NFL) and the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, resulted in the confiscation of more than 214,000 counterfeit items. The haul included jerseys, hats, and memorabilia. Authorities said the efforts, part of a pre-existing initiative dubbed Operation Team Player, aims to protect fans from fraudulent products and prevent illegal sellers from profiting during the country's biggest sporting event. Since its launch in 2013, Operation Team Player has seized more than $455 million in counterfeit sports merchandise and apparel, making it the largest anti-counterfeiting initiative within the federal government, Homeland Security Investigations said. Football jerseys sell for $149.99 on the official NFL online store, with Super Bowl customized jerseys retailing for $179.99. The New Orleans Police Department will be teamed up with agents from the city's Department of Revenue, the Department of Homeland Security, and NFL members to identify and address illegal vendors and the sale of counterfeit merchandise. Lieutenant Kenny Temple of the New Orleans Police Department said, "Some 200,000 visitors are expected to converge on New Orleans during the week leading up to Super Bowl LIX, scheduled for February 9, 2025 at the Caesars Superdome. This influx is about twice the number of visitors the city typically sees in an average week," tourism officials say. Donald Trump is planning to be among the visitors and will become the first sitting president to be a spectator at the NFL title game, in which the Kansas City Chiefs will go for an unprecedented three-peat against the Philadelphia Eagles. Australian state lawmaker has officially adopted the name Aussie Trump in an unusual stand against the ruling centre. Against ruling centre-left Labour Party. The lawmaker, previously known as Ben Dawkins, announced the change on social media as a protest. Representing as an independent in Western Australia's upper house, Trump accused the Labour government of tyranny and systematic corruption in a defiant social media post. He also mimicked former US President Donald Trump's call for increased fossil fuel extraction, urging voters to oust Labour. The name change comes as Labour prepares for an election in resource-rich Western Australia next month, followed by a national election due by May. Also, Trump was expelled from the Labour Party in 2023 following alleged breaches of family violence restraining orders. Protesters in Bangladesh have vandalized and set fire to the former family home of the post-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, as well as those of other members of the party. The unrest was sparked by news that Hasina would address the country via social media from India, where she has been in exile since students-led protests hosted her last year. The 77-year-old Hasina, who was in charge of Bangladesh for 20 years, was seen as an autocrat whose government ruthlessly clamps down on dissent. On Wednesday evening, an excavator smashed down the house of Hasina's late father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who is also Bangladesh's founding president. The structure had been repurposed into a museum. Hasina's father is widely viewed as an independent hero, but anger at his daughter has tarnished his legacy among Hasina's critics. Hasina, once hailed as a pro-democracy icon, has seen her reputation sour after taking office. She has been accused of rigging elections and jailing her critics, and her administration was widely seen as corrupt. She faces arrest warrants for cracking down on the students-led protest last year, which saw hundreds of people. Protesters also vandalized and touched the houses and businesses of senior Awami League leaders. There have been calls on social media to rid the country of pilgrimage sites of fascism. Japan Airlines a plane that was taxiing on the tarmac of C2 Tacoma International Airport apparently clipped the tail of a parked Delta aircraft on Wednesday morning, airport authorities said. Authorities responded to the incident around 10:17 a.m., the airport said on X. All passengers from Japan Airlines Flight 68 and Delta Airlines Flight 1921 were deplaned with no reported injuries, and response crews were working to move the aircraft off the ramp taxiway, the airport said. While taxiing up arrival from Tokyo's Narita International Airport, the right wing of Japan Airlines Boeing 787 came into contact with the Delta plane's tail. Japan Airlines said in an email statement. There were no injuries reported among the 172 passengers and 13 crew members on board. Delta spokesperson Samantha Moore Factu said in an email that its Boeing 737 was waiting to have ice removed from its exterior when the wingtip of another aircraft reportedly made contact with its tail. Dicing, as it's known, can occur before a flight begins to taxi to the runway, she said. There were 142 passengers on board the flight to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and they were being transferred to a new aircraft, she said. There were no reports of injuries for crew or passengers. Please stay with us.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economic, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what
I have fought very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
Activist group have sued Elon Musk's social media platform X in a Berlin court, accusing it of breaking European law by not giving them the information they need to track disinformation online ahead of Germany's February 23rd national election. The two groups, the Society for Civil Rights (GFF) and Democracy Reporting International, said X was not providing systematic access to data like the reach of posts and the number of likes and shares they got. Other platforms have granted us access to systematically track public debates on their platforms, but X has refused to do so, said DRI's Michael Mayer Resende in a statement on Wednesday, announcing the lawsuit. The group say they have the right to receive this data under the terms of the European Union's Digital Services Act. X did not immediately respond to an emailed request for comment. Authorities throughout Europe have been on high alert for evidence of systematic online disinformation or operations seeking to sway elections, especially since last year's later annulled presidential social media campaign. Moscow denied interference. In the case of X, still used by much of the German government and political class, despite some recent departures, the question is lent added urgency by Musk's recent endorsement of the German far right. Platforms are increasingly being weaponized against democratic elections, added GFF's Simon Rolf. We must defend ourselves. Since his takeover of the former Twitter, Musk has shut down most of the access routes by which researchers were in the past able to track the spread of information on the platform, converting that access into a charged for service. The world's richest person, now leading U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to slim and purge the U.S. federal government, hosted the far-right alternative for Germany's leader, Alice Weidel, for an interview on X in January, posting only the AfD can save Germany. France's government lived to see another day on Wednesday after it survived a no-confidence vote in parliament and gave the recently appointed prime minister a temporary reprieve from months of political turmoil and the country a promise of stability, at least in the short term. The no-confidence motion was supported by only 128 lawmakers in the 577-seat National Assembly, France's lower house, short of the absolute majority required. Had it passed, the motion would have forced the centrist Prime Minister, François Bayrou, and his cabinet to resign. The motion's failure ensures safe passage of a 2025 budget bill that France needs badly. It has been hoped will rein in the country's surging debt and deficit with a goal of generating 50 billion euros in saving through tax increases and spending cuts. The budget bill now goes to the Senate for final approval on Thursday. On Wednesday, Mr. Bayrou passed through a second no-confidence motion triggered by another budget bill on health care and other social security expenses. Mr. Bayrou's bigger problem of running a government in a hostile territory has not been solved. The lower house is deeply divided with a centrist conservative bloc that supports him and two main opposition wings, a tenuous alliance of left-wing parties called the New Popular Front and the anti-immigrant far-right National Rally Party that do not. But the vote and the new budget will, for now, give one of Europe's leading economies a semblance of stability. Mr. Bayrou, a centrist ally of President Emmanuel Macron, was appointed just over a month ago, the fourth prime minister in a year, unusual for France. The Italian government said in a press release on Wednesday that a spyware campaign reviewed by WhatsApp and carried out with spyware made by Paragon Solutions targeted people across several countries in Europe. The government, led by far-right Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, denied being behind the targeting of Italian citizens Francesco Cancellato, a journalist who heads the news website's fan page, and Luca Cesarini, an activist who works for Mediterranean Saving Humans, a non-governmental organization that helps immigrants. In the release, the government said that its defense cybersecurity organization, the Agenzia per la Cybersicurezza Nazionale, a national cybersecurity agency, contacted WhatsApp and its law firm Advance, which told the authorities that there are 7 mobile phone users in Italy who were targeted in the spyware campaign. WhatsApp declined to provide the identities of the targets, citing privacy concerns, the government statement read. WhatsApp also said that there are mobile phone users in Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Germany, Greece, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden based on their country phone codes, according to the Italian government statements. WhatsApp did not immediately respond to a request for comment asking to confirm the number of targets in Italy, the countries mentioned by the Italian government, and the other claims attributed to WhatsApp by the Italian government. Paragon told TechCrunch on Tuesday that it sells its surveillance technology to the U.S. government and other unspecified allies. The company also said that it requires that all users agree to terms and conditions that explicitly prohibit the illicit targeting of journalists and other civil society figures, adding that it has a zero-tolerance policy against such targeting. The spyware maker said it would terminate our relationship with any customer that violates its terms of service. Indonesia's health partnership with the U.S. Agency for International Development are on hold, and it remains unclear whether they will be permanently suspended, its health minister said on Thursday. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is considering merging USAID, Washington's primary humanitarian agency, into the State Department in a major revamp that would shrink its workforce and align its spending with his America First policy. A U.S. freeze on foreign aid for Indonesia could strain the Asian country's efforts to fight against HIV and tuberculosis, which replaced COVID-19 to become the top cause of infectious disease-related deaths globally in 2023. USAID has invested $800 million in Indonesia since 2020, the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta said in November. The Southeastern Asian countries' projects with the U.S. agency have involved HIV and tuberculosis. More so than USAID, Bodi said Indonesia also receives drugs from the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, which counts Washington as its biggest donor. The U.S. Embassy in Jakarta and USAID did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Indonesia has seen TB cases spike in the past few years, with the health ministry estimating more than 1 million cases in 2023 versus around 820,000 in 2020. Olivia Helinda, health analyst at non-profit group Center for Indonesia's Strategic Development Initiatives, said the U.S. aid pause would have a big impact on Indonesia. Separately, Bodi said Indonesia will provide a free health screening for its citizens starting February 10, with a budget of about 3 trillion rupiah, approximately $184 million, to prevent early deaths. The initial target for the screening is 220 million people for this year. That's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on all our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube.